Europeans can save live service games after end of life. Is this true? It seems like something they're trying to get to the lawmakers over there. We'll take a look and see what they're saying. Video games have grown into an industry. Right. Increasing number of publishers are selling video games that are required to connect through the internet to the game publisher or a home phone to function. While this is not a problem in itself, when support ends for these games, very often the publishers simply sever the connection to the necessary game and destroy all the working copies of the game. So basically what he's saying is that there are live service games that come out and then the developer just decides to pull the plug on them, and now everybody that bought the game effectively wasted their money. So basically, and also that you're not able to make a private server in replacement of that, right? So you're fucked. So that's basically what happened, right? It's just not just live service. Yeah, but it's primarily live service. I know there's a few exceptions. The practice is effectively robbing customers of their purchases and makes restoration impossible. Besides being an affront to consumer rights, video games themselves are unique creative works. Like film, music, one cannot simply be substituted for another. By destroying them, it represents a creative loss for everyone involved and erases history in ways not possible to other mediums. So basically, they're trying to add a law. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions except in the public interest or in the cases under the conditions provided under the law, subject to fair compensation, being paid in good time for their loss. So basically, I completely agree with this. I want to say I completely 100%, 200% absolutely agree with this. So let's talk about why I agree with this. The main reason why is because if you buy something, you should be able to use it. And I think the developer, so I have no problem if a developer has a live service game. I think that you should have to play on their version of the game. That's fair. But if they shut down the servers, I don't think that they should have the legal authority to shut down private servers that exist in place of the official servers. So, for example, let's say World of Warcraft gets shut down. I'm not a fan of private servers, and I don't think you should make private servers right now because there is a legal way that you can go through to consume the product. But if there is no way that you can go through to consume the product in the way that you initially bought it, then you should be able to remedy that yourself. So if you have a game and they shut down the servers, you should be able to make your own server in place of that, and they should not be able to shut that down because they are not providing the service anymore. It's that fucking simple. So that's what I think. When they abandon it, it should become private. Exactly. So that's what I think you should be able to do. Time for the USA to implement this too? Yeah, exactly. I agree. I'm definitely... How does that work with continuously updated game? Well, simple. It's the same as it works with Classic WoW right now. People play Classic WoW, and everybody likes Classic WoW, and it's the same patch that it's been for 10 years. Basically, I know they did a couple of updates for, consistency, etc., but for the most part, it's been pretty much the exact same. So, yeah, you just do the exact same thing. So the government's going to force the developers to pay for the service if the game is essentially dead? You a retard? We got a retard in the chat? We got a fucking idiot that don't know how to listen? Shut the fuck up, bitch. Shut up, you fucking idiot. Get the fuck out of here. Trying to have a conversation. So this dude actually went and he talked about this situation. We'll take a look at it. We'll see what he's going to say. I like this guy. He made another video about this before.
Hi, I'm Ross.
Hi, Ross.
For the past several months, I've been working on a campaign to stop the destruction of video games.
Yeah, we watched the original
video. Most video games work indefinitely, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But more and more are being designed to stop working the second support ends from the publisher. A kill switch, essentially.
Yeah.
It's a form of planned obsolescence, where publishers are destroying games they've already sold to you.
Planned obsolescence, by the way, some people might not know this, is that this is a actual term. It's not like some bullshit. It's when, how many of y'all ever bought a phone and 2 years and 1 month on the dot, the phone just starts going, y'all ever had that happen? That's planned obsolescence. And I think that in Europe it was ruled to be illegal. I'm not an expert in this, but my understanding is that it is. So they can't basically design things so that they are made to break. So this, yeah, I'm just saying, that's not a, he's not using a phrase. This is a codified term.
Keeping your money. And this is all preventable. Some people don't understand that. I've compared this before to studios from a century ago burning their own films after they were done showing them to recover the silver content. And now most films of that era are gone forever. That's very similar to what's happening to video games today. It's just a terrible practice for everyone involved. Now, most of my efforts have gone towards challenging the legality of this practice in various countries. Because
why should a company be responsible for keeping the servers turned on for a game to operate? I want you to say sorry. Say sorry for wasting our fucking time with your dumbass message. You didn't even listen to what was been said. Say sorry. You wasting everybody's fucking time with your bullshit. Well, no, come on, let's go. We gotta get this over with. We can't be wasting our time with this bullshit this early. Bro, it's barely noon. You already being stupid. What are you doing being stupid this early? Sorry? Yeah, me too, man. Shut the fuck up, bitch.
So consumer hostile, it's not clear if what's going on is even legal. That's still ongoing. But now we have a new option, proposing new law, and for the entire European Union. It took months to get put together and processed. But now we have a European Citizens Initiative devoted to halting the destruction of video games. You can read it yourself.
I just can't, like, I'm thinking about, I look behind him and I'm like, that's like the Windows XP, like, default background. Like, I don't know why, I can't unsee it.
This would require publishers to leave games they have sold to customers in a working state at the time of shutdown, without requiring any further connection to them or affiliated parties for the games to function. How they would do this would be up to them. This would also apply to free-to-play games that contain microtransactions. Because if you purchased a microtransaction as a good, then the game is made unplayable, well then you just lost your goods.
You did, and it's like basically your waifu evaporates. Like, that's it, it's gone. Like, the game goes into service, all of your SSR 5-star characters are deleted, they're done. Yeah.
Would not require publishers to give up any of their intellectual property rights, give up their source code, though that one would still be nice. It wouldn't require endless support. They can end it anytime they want as far as we're concerned. It wouldn't need to host servers.
You hear that?
They would have to either patch out that requirement or else allow customers to host them privately.
Exactly.
Assume any liability for what customers do with their copies of games.
Yeah, it's not their problem.
Nothing about this initiative would have any impact on publisher business practices while the game is being supported.
Exactly.
In other words, publishers can continue doing whatever they want as long as you get to keep your game. It amazes me when some people say that's going too far in favor of the consumer. Though to be fair, that's probably not most Europeans. The idea here is we're just trying to stop games from being destroyed. That's it. So we're taking as narrow an approach as possible that still solves the problem. If we get enough signatures, then this goes before the European Union to be considered as new law. Now, if you're on board with this, you don't have to keep watching. You can go sign it right now. But wait.
I don't really see why, like, anybody would be against this. This seems like just a good decision. Because, like, here's the thing, right? Is, like, if you pay for things inside of a game, like, you still spent your fucking money. And I think that if you spend your money on something, you should have some degree of protection for what happens to that thing. Like, this whole thing, and this is what these companies do, is they try to take everything, like, you know, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, live in a pod, eat the bugs, right? There's a big component of this with owning nothing that's happening a lot, where people buy things, but they don't have any ownership of the thing that they're buying. So, for example, like, you buy a movie, well, you don't buy a movie. You buy it on Amazon, and you don't even really own the DVD. You don't have any autonomy of what you're going to do with that movie. You can't watch it wherever you want to watch it. You can't put it in a DVD player somewhere else. You can't do anything, right? So, I think that there's, like, a massive, like, the level of control that companies can exert over a user after the user has given the money, I think is too big right now. There's too many things that a company can do to control what a user does with something that they've spent their money on. And to me, when somebody says, oh, but you didn't buy it, you bought a license for it, that doesn't really matter, because licenses aren't real. right? Like you can't go out in, you know, in nature and, oh, that's a wild license, right? It's not a real thing. This is like a invention of people, right? People invented this idea of a license. So what I'm saying is that this idea of a license needs to fucking change.
Before you do, you have one chance to do this right. It's not hard, but if you make a mistake, your signature is invalidated and you don't get another chance. We've made guides at StopKillingGames.com on how to do this, just in case.
Yep.
But is this as simple as people sign this and it becomes law in the EU? Yeah, it might be. Now, it's not a guarantee, but I think if we get the signatures, this passes. Why do I say that? Well, it's a few factors. Politicians like easy wins.
Well, yeah, there's that. And also, like, if you understand the topic, there is no way that it's defendable that you can spend money on something and then they can just shut it down randomly and prevent you from figuring out a way to access it on your own. It's like obviously fucking unfair. It's completely unfair. Any reasonable person could look at it and be like, wow, that's really fucking stupid.
And this doesn't require them to do much at all. And unless it involves gambling or protecting children, politicians generally don't care about video games. So this isn't of big consequence to them or most of their constituencies. EU law is already unclear on a lot of this practice anyway.
Yeah.
And we would be making it easy for them to settle it. It falls in line with other consumer practices.
That's the biggest thing to me, right? Is because this, if you logically interpret the law from like what my understanding of it is, which is probably kind of inaccurate, but I think it's kind of accurate too, is that this is very clearly a consumer unfriendly practice that is in nobody's best interest other than the companies. There is not a single consumer whose experience with a product is improved because other people cannot make servers whenever that game is no longer being supported officially. Nobody's experience is improved by not allowing this to happen. So it is a pure negative.
How when you buy something, you're generally allowed to keep it? And finally, this is a diversion from really serious topics that politicians would prefer not to deal with.
Yeah.
This would let them stay busy and avoid hard stuff. In fact, I would bet if we can clear the signature threshold, this passes into law and we solve the problem 90% or more. I say 90% because this would only impact the EU. So if a game was released only in China or Japan, yeah, this wouldn't save those. But most video games are sold globally. And the EU is part of that. Once it's a requirement...
Well, here's the other thing, right? Is like, actually, it would pretty much solve the problem. I'll tell you why. It's because you can just log on to a European server. So even if it's not the law here in America, if you have the copy of the game, you can just log on to the European server. I mean, like, yeah, you're going to have bad ping, right? It's not going to be great, but it's better than nothing. So yeah, as long as there's a place where you can do this, then it completely solves it. For all intents and purposes, for... an average online gamer.
That companies have to let you keep the games they sold to you in a major market like that, I think it spreads, whether it's the law elsewhere or not. Now, unfortunately, what I would not bet on, because it's a huge unknown, is whether we can pass that signature threshold to begin with.
Yeah.
In order for this to work, we need 1 million signatures across the EU. Though really, it's more than that. Because some are going to be invalidated because...
That's a lot.
Who knows why.
That's a lot.
So really,
Damn.
we need more like 1.2 or 1.3
That's
million
a lot.
signatures. Oh, and it gets worse. Because you need certain minimum thresholds per country for it to pass. So say somebody signs it in Greece. Well, then we need almost 15,000 more Greeks to sign it. Otherwise, none of the Greek signatures count. That rule strikes me as rather obtuse and awkward. I almost wonder if the EU took a page from the United States for that one. Anyway, that's a lot of signatures. I might be delusional for attempting this. I don't know yet. Now, the good news is...
I can support it. I definitely support it. Absolutely. And, like, the thing is, there's a good chance that the way it stands right now could be problematic in ways that I might not have been able to predict right now. Like, was, for example, like, you know, releasing the same patch, one patch behind for retail WoW. Like, this would maybe technically be accurate. It's like, should not be true. So, like, I think it's something that should be investigated. They should figure out what the solution for this is, because it's very clearly bad for users.
1 year to get them all. So we will have time. Although I'll say right now, there is no way I can get that many Europeans just from my audience. The only way this works is by reaching out to European YouTubers and streamers and so on to get on board, and non-English speaking ones at that.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I'll do my part and promote this the best I can, but I have limited reach. In fact, since I've started Stop Killing Games, I want to say everyone I've reached out to never responded. So me reaching out doesn't work. It's a total failure rate. However, there are two things that did work. One is people reaching out to me, since I respond to a lot. And two is people just covering this on their own.
No, I'll link it to you guys after this.
That really worked. Which means if you're watching this, you may be a critical link in all this.
Oh, I'm a critical link, guys.
You can tell other YouTubers, streamers, etc. about this initiative, and maybe they'll pick it up. And again, it's even better if their core audience is non-English speaking. The number of native English speakers in the EU is relatively small. So we need to connect the dots in other languages the best we can.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, I'm offering myself for interviews, publicity on this issue, whatever, to almost anyone with a European audience of some size. In addition to that,
I'll tell you, like, a lot of people from Europe watch my stream. Like, that's crazy. I didn't even know that. Somebody told me at Twitch just a long time ago that I had one of the biggest ratios of, like, European viewers for somebody who's not a European streamer. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Spokesperson and backup spokesperson for the initiative have offered to speak on this also. And they are multilingual. And we have a few more official organizers who may be willing to discuss this in other languages as well.
Hopefully.
These are the people officially in charge. You know, actual Europeans. Yeah, even though I've helped, officially, I'm not a part of this. I'm not eligible. Doesn't matter. Whatever gets us to the finish line. And speaking of eligibility, it's pretty simple. You need to be a citizen of an EU country, though you don't have to live there, and you need to be at least voting age. That's it. This also means it's not just you who can sign this, but your friends can sign this. Your family can sign this. Girlfriends, boyfriends can sign this. They all count. Get everybody. And tell them to get people to sign too. And yes, it feels weird that I'm an ineligible American campaigning for Europeans to sign a document. But you know what? If it passes...
So telling game companies to give away their server tech is kind of bad for IP purposes? It was clearly stated inside. That's complex enough to where, like, I'm not going to get mad at you for saying that. It was actually clearly stated inside of what was written that that would not be required.
We all win. So we just have to go to where the openings are. Oh, and if your relatives or whoever don't care about video games, you can explain to them this is also about not losing basic ownership. Like, if video games are cars, what's happening now would be like if I sold you a car at full price, then later, and I wouldn't tell you how much later, so it's not a rental, I then came to your house and repossessed your car.
Right.
But I also kept your money. That is not good business.
No.
Or not for the consumer anyway.
Yeah, the way that it stands right now is completely consumer unfriendly. Like as a consumer, like, you're getting fucked. That's all there is to it. You're getting fucked.
Yes, taking back what you've sold is great for businesses. Maybe that's why the industry is worth more than movies and music combined. I get it. Video games aren't that important to most people. But because of that, they're the canary in the coal mine. What about farm equipment, education tools, medical devices? You do not want this practice spreading to other areas, believe me. Now, one thing I want to...
That's actually, he brings up a really good point, and you're seeing car manufacturers do this too. So there are a number of subscriptions that you have to get to not have to, but that you can get for cars. And a lot of the subscriptions, like, for example, OnStar and, like, having direct service, I think makes sense that you would have to pay a subscription for it because it's an ongoing service that happens. But for example, I think heated seats is one of them as well, where in some cars you have to pay money to have something activated. I think the idea that you can buy a product and then have part of that product intentionally deactivated to upsell you is why are we allowing this? That's insane. Absolutely fucking insane. How's that even possible? So video games, he's definitely right that like this is the canary in the coal mine, where if this is happening to video games, it's going to happen to cars, TVs, computers, and stuff like this afterwards, right? You already saw what happened, for example, with Unity. You saw what happened with Adobe, for example. So this is happening with software as well. It's a very big problem. Logitech mouse.
Some of you have already done the math.
Yeah.
And realize we need an average of over 2,700 signatures a day in order to make this work.
That's crazy.
I'll say right now, we're not going to get that many every day.
Yeah.
This stuff happens in waves as big people pick it up. Plenty of days will be below par, but others could be 10 times or higher. So don't write this off too early. Don't be that guy I've seen in team games who gives up at the slightest sign of resistance and calls it game over 30 seconds into the match.
That's it. We're done,
I hate
guys.
That crap. I think we're at a crossroads. If we can get enough signatures, then I think we end this and change gaming history. Yeah. Or we can't get our act together and the problem gets worse and worse.
Yeah, again, it's about making sure that a law like this happens, if for no other reason than to set a precedent for other industries doing things that are similar, that have more far-reaching concerns like cars.
Then in the future, we really don't own anything. And we're charged a lot for not owning anything.
Yeah.
Now, maybe we get lucky and this is redundant due to all the other legal challenges we have going. But either way, this is it for your chance to save games.
Yep.
There's not going to be a round 2. If you or someone you know is an EU citizen, you have the power to end this just by signing a form.
This is one thing that people don't understand. Like a lot of like people that, I mean, if you live in like a shit country, then like it's not true. But like, if you get enough people together, you can do anything you want. I wish more people understood this, but I think that like there's an effort that's made to make people feel like their input and their collective bargaining is not meaningful. It absolutely is. If you get enough people together, you can change whatever the fuck you want to change.
Plan may have a critical weakness, and that I'm counting on gamers to care about not seeing their games destroyed. I hope that's not too big an ask.
Yeah.
Because years from now, somebody could be saying, yeah, I had the chance to save gaming, but it required me to open up a whole new tab in my browser and fill in my name and a CAPTCHA. Oh my God. So I didn't do it. It was just too much work. It wasn't worth it.
I had to give him my email.
If that's the general sentiment among gamers, then yeah, I can't overcome that.
Yeah, there's no way.
Then I'm Don Quixote here fighting windmills. I hope that's not the case. So, yeah, go sign it or tell somebody European about it.
Yeah, he right. He right. He right. True, true, true. All true. Societal norms decide by society. People can overthrow a law, a group, anything. Yeah, you can do anything you want to do. So I want to link you guys this. I totally support Ross in this. I think he's right. I'll link you guys the initiative as well. There's the video. Make sure to give it a like. Well, I guess the initiative's just in the comments here, right? Yeah, it's right here. So just take a look at it. If you're interested, if you care, this is a huge issue. And I don't really see why, like, I don't see why people would be against this. I don't understand it. Now, I think that the way that the language is written now, some people had concerns with the language. I think that that's obviously up for debate, right? Because, you know, who knows, right? Maybe there could be some language that's problematic. But the essence of what's being argued for, I think, is legitimate. And that is that if you buy a game, you should be able to play that fucking game, and they shouldn't be able to stop you from trying to play the game when they decide to stop providing service, right? That's the difference. So yeah, it's like, remember whenever Windows decided to stop updating Microsoft XP, and then like the federal government was so fucking stupid and incompetent, they had to spend extra money to increase the support time because of how dumb they were, right? But like they didn't shut down Windows XP, right? It's not like it got deleted. They just stopped providing support for it. So if you stop providing support for something, that's fine. But to actively stop other people from being able to solve the problem and figure it out themselves, that's where the issue is. That's the problem. Please tweet about it. Yeah. And asking gacha companies to reimburse their players at closure. Tisk. Well, it's not about asking people to reimburse. I think that asking for reimbursement is too much. But what isn't too much is to ask or to not actively prevent people from creating an alternative that they plan to play. Because if you are, here's the thing, right? A company, if you're selling something and a person buys it, that person should be entitled to a certain amount of rights for what they bought. So you can't just be able to sell something to somebody and then just later on change your mind and be like, yeah, well, we decided we don't like what you're saying on Twitter, so we're going to delete your waifus. Like, what the fuck? It doesn't even make sense. So the problem is, yeah, give an offline version. Exactly. And if there's no offline version that the person should have access to, well, then effectively that person just got scammed, right? Because they bought something and then their access to it was removed through no fault of their own. So yeah, no, they got scammed. Like, absolutely. Signing right now, yeah. And there's no reason that people should put up with this. Why put up with this? Why allow this to happen? Because let's take a step back. Let's look at Nintendo. When Nintendo sends somebody a cease and desist, Nintendo doesn't do that. The power of that cease and desist is not by Nintendo. Nintendo is nothing. It's some fucking Japanese company. Who gives a fuck about Nintendo? Do you want to know why the cease and desist matters? It's because if the cease and desist isn't followed, the government comes and actually shuts you the fuck down. So Nintendo is powerless. They can't do anything. The government acts on their behalf. And all I'm saying is that we should have the government act on our behalf instead. So yeah, I completely agree with this initiative. I absolutely do. Obviously, there are probably some nuances that should get ironed out, etc. But, with what does count as like abandonment, etc. But there's the initiative right there. I totally support it. I think that it should be, and I think also, again, even if you don't care about the video game stuff, you should care about this because this is what will happen to other products as well. Like refrigerators. It will happen to cars. It will happen as everything becomes electronic and more companies try to transform their products into services so that they can charge you for them more regularly. This will become more and more common until it completely fucking controls everything, basically, right? It's going to be pervasive through everything. You broke the page? Well, good. You mentioned it on multiple occasions, so more people see it live. If I remember, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, what will stop publishers from dropping EU market? It's financially illegal taxing to implement because core logic is server-based. They won't give it up. The core logic, so here's the thing. There have been a lot of games that have been remade, but the reason why... So do you want to know the reason why nobody's been able to remake Bloodborne into PS5? Do you want to know the real reason why? It's because it's illegal. If remaking Bloodborne for, like, PC was legal and you could do it, it would have happened years ago. The big reason why this stuff doesn't happen is because the resources put towards it it's a waste of resources because you can just get banned. Couldn't Americans not sign in via VPN? Now they're losing their source code? Well, I don't know. What about the difference between paying for a service and paying for a product? I think that just because you call a product a service doesn't make it a service. You can't just redefine things in ways that give you more control. Like, for example, a service makes sense whenever you're talking about a haircut. A service makes sense whenever you're talking about somebody mowing your lawn. It doesn't make sense in terms of a video game. So just because you want to redefine things in a way that's beneficial to you doesn't necessarily mean that way should be enforced legally. So no, I don't agree with that. I think you're wrong. About what? Yeah, because I'd be fine to hear, like, Let me read this person's comment. I think microtransactions count as bought service, not as a product. I think you're hyper-fixated on the Logitech thing. I'm not even thinking about that. Who cares about that? Sorry if you already saw a Pirate Software stick on the topic. No, I'm fully willing to admit or to acknowledge that there might be nuances of this that probably shouldn't be as... what do you call it? They should not be, like, as broad as they are. No, sure. Yeah, that's fine. I agree. Okay, fine, I agree. Sure. But, like, what part of it is problematic? Let me go ahead and listen. Just sign? Yeah, no, I'm curious. I think that being able to allow us to use the game itself is the service, and the items on that game aren't real. Yeah, but the money you spent on them was, and the money was real, and because the money was real, I think you should have real rights for those products. So if you want to say that it's not real, oh, well, it's not a real product. Okay, well, I'm giving you real money. So if it's not a real product, then I should be able to steal it then, right? Because it doesn't exist? No, that doesn't, no. It's too much power for them. Absolutely not. Consumer protection, yeah. So you're spending real money on this, you should have real protections. It doesn't matter. And if you're not spending real money on it, then yeah, sure, right? But if you spend real money on something, there should be actual accountability for it, absolutely. Right, everything is getting more subscription-like, exactly. And what if WoW died after a bunch of people bought cosmetics? Well, then it should be fair if somebody wants to make a private server that, like, let's say, so WoW shuts down. Easy decision, right? So WoW shuts down, and the game is no longer being provided. I think that you should be able to set up a private server with no restrictions, and Blizzard can't shut it down. Because they're not providing an alternative for it. Because you bought that game, and you should have the right to be able to play that game in the way that you bought it. Absolutely. Like, if that's not the case, then the company should give you back your money. You can't just take people's money and then there's no accountability for what you do with the money. That's a huge problem. Like, as a consumer, as a customer, you have certain rights, and you should have certain rights. It's crazy. Of course not. Let me read it again. I don't think the company should be held accountable to that, though. People make bad decisions. You can't make the seller to force... I don't think the company should be held accountable to that. What do you think? Well, they're not being held accountable. It's that... So I think you're misunderstanding. So it's not that they're not being held accountable. It's that a person can set up a server in place of the company instead. People make bad decisions. You can't force the seller to make up for those. I don't really understand what you mean by this. Yeah, I'm very confused by this. What if they tell you before that the game dies and you lose your stuff? It doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't care. I don't think that you should be able to sign there are a number of essential consumer rights that you should not be able to sign away with an EULA. I think this is a very harmful process because the truth is that EULAs and terms of service are massive. They are unapproachable. They're made in legal language that is not accessible to an average person. So by the nature of you signing this, everybody knows that people don't know what they're signing whenever they sign an EULA. Everybody knows that they don't know what they're signing. So why are we using this as a benchmark for what's acceptable and what's not? It's crazy. Of course not. What I thought was the case was this law would enforce companies to provide service after the game dies. That's clearly not what it said. It said that, it literally said that's not what it does. It said explicitly, no, that's not what it does. Okay, so there we go, right? Jesus. Jesus Christ, read it before you talk? I know, man, I know. Jason Schreier Bungie article just dropped. Yeah, I might look at a couple of videos. Someone starts private server, WoW decides to reopen WoW with an updated server structure. At what point is the legal line drawn? When they announce relaunching WoW, when they open the servers, when it's available? Well, I don't know. I think that's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. And that's why I think there are probably nuances like that that are worth investigating and looking into. Absolutely.